I love that. Thank you.
You know what? Because you're on the iPad, we can't do that. So go ahead and proceed.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to the, I believe, our second hearing for the FY 2021 operating capital budgets. And today we will be doing permits, approvals, and inspections. And I just want to remind everyone, when you're not speaking, please mute yourself and then unmute, because it causes interference when other people are talking. So I believe we have Zachary Ament here from the auditor's office. Zachary, if you'd like to proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The proposed FY 2021 budget for Department of Permits, Approvals, and Inspections totals $12.6 million, 1.7 million in Metropolitan District Fund, which the council does not appropriate. The general fund portion of the budget totals $10.4 million and increases by $392,000 or 3.9%, primarily due to personnel expenses. The special fund portion of the budget totals $500,000 for the newly proposed plans review program, which will utilize a third party to expedite the building plans review for developers. This analysis identifies 3 potential operating budget reductions ranging from $76,000 to $1.3 million, and 1 potential capital budget reduction, the IT initiative, totaling $1.4 million. In your packet, you'll see that each potential reduction is identified as a normal economy reduction or a pandemic economy reduction. The first normal economy reduction on page 6 is a type of reduction that our office would likely identify under normal economic situations. It relates to the department's spending history. This reduction is less important to discuss now that we're in a pandemic economy. The second normal economy reduction, number 2 on page 6, may be worthy of discussion because it relates to new consulting services. The remaining reductions beginning on page 6 relate to the new pandemic economy that we have entered. These explore how across-the-board actions might affect the department, and the purpose of presenting them is to give the director an opportunity to discuss the operational impacts of large-scale funding changes so that the possible staff and service levels effects of lost revenues can be understood by all. Other discussion issues follow in the budget package, beginning on page 9, which address the following: personnel, the new plans review program, rat eradication program, maintenance, derelict properties, donation bins, and operational changes, including COVID-19 and enterprise strategic plan initiatives. At this time, I would like to turn it over for discussion.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Okay. I have questions. Just basically trying to understand what is here, and I understood the part about, what did you call it? You called it regular, normal economy. I understood that. What for the 5 to 10% budget reductions of pandemic economy, can you? So I would assume in all these scenarios, what is the status of the cost of living increase and the step increases?
That question for Zachary.
Yes, I'm sorry.
So Councilman Catch, the question is what is the status of the
Right, in the normal, where you call it normal, whatever, normal economy, are the COLAs and the step increases in that number, in other words, eliminated from the budget?
Yes, look at B on page 8.
Page what, 8?
It shows $89,000 to fund the COLA, And then $59,000 to fund increments and longevities.
Now, you're talking about, what page now?
8.
Okay, I guess I'm referring to page 6, 2, and 3.
Yeah, that's where I thought. So was your question, what was pre-COVID and then post-COVID, the difference?
Well, yes. In other words, I'm asking under normal economy, which is pre-COVID, are those reductions, do they include elimination of the COLA and elimination of the step increases?
That is in the pandemic, starting at 3. It's not in the normal.
Okay, so then you have, under the pandemic, you've got, of course, the hiring freeze.
Right.
And then you have possible, furloughs or there was an or in there when I read it somewhere last night where it would be either a salary freeze with no COLAs or step increases or 10% of, no,
Across
that's
the board. Right.
so that's just on salaries or everything else?
That would be across the board of the total program.
So so as far as salaries go, I mean, are you proposing a possible, I mean, in this scenario, you could possibly have a 10% salary cut, or is it that it's 10% across the whole department and the salary reductions or the furloughs would have to be adjusted accordingly?
So these are different scenarios that look at salaries as well as just a straight 10% across the board. So it's not like both of them. So part of it is included in, they kind of overlap in places. So it's not like you can take all 3 of them. So the goal here is to show you various scenarios that would result in various amounts of savings.
Now,
In different ways of achieving the savings, whether it's through salary reductions or just straight across the board reductions.
now with
Would
the,
include salaries.
so with the, I saw the word furlough in here. Yeah, here we go. A 5 to 6 week furlough for all positions. That's a possibility. Now, obviously, if you're going to do that, the earlier you do it, the better. Because if you let's say you make 40,000 and the furlough is going to mean you're going to lose 3,000. I mean, you don't want that 3,000 lost to you over a period of 2 months or 3 months. Am I reading this wrong or what?
No, these are different options. So it could be potentially, depending on how much funding you're looking to save, it could be a combination thereof. It could be a 5-day furlough with a hiring freeze. So these are just various components of salaries that could, be considered if that's, what the council would like to do. We're putting as many options out there for the council's consideration. And we're trying to give like a minimum and a maximum of what these options would save.
So there is there's overlaps everywhere.
Yes, in
That's
certain
okay.
cases, yes.
I think
Especially
that's
with
what
salaries.
confusing because I tried to get a total and I knew that I couldn't mix all of them because they're overlapping. Just to make a statement, I think if the council considers any of these the more severe cuts, the sooner we do it, the better, because some of these cuts could have a profound negative effect on employees. And so let me just stop there. And I, of course, do want to ask, is Michael Malinoff there? Or is he? Yeah, okay. I don't want to ask him now when he comes on. I'm just curious as to how he sees his department operating with the most severe cuts. So, okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Liz, you have a comment, Liz?
Yeah, I was just going to say that
Wade, turn your mic off.
these are not necessarily the council's decisions in terms of the management decisions that would be at play, but if there were to be a decision to make an across-the-board cut that would affect, say, all the agencies that aren't education or something like that, this hearing could serve to get information from the department head as to how operationally that would be handled. And so we're trying to provide in the analysis some different scenarios so you can get a sense of the magnitude of the numbers, really trying to just understand that, what would a 1 week freeze get in terms of savings, get you. If you have to come up with a certain size of savings, then you want to be able to really grasp how it's going to affect the agency. So that was the goal of our analysis. It's not to try to, come out with our claws and say we're trying to get lots of, money identified here for cuts. It's more to try to put this in perspective and give you an idea and let the departments have the opportunity to talk about it.
So obviously, if there's any changes in salaries, it must be across the board. It can't be like this department furloughed for 2 weeks and that department for 1 week. It has to be a countywide policy.
I think that you're going to want to have these discussions. These are the good discussions to be having, now or, as we proceed through the hearings.
Yeah, Madam Chair,
I'm sorry. It sounds like Wade is asking, can we do a surgical cut on certain programs without impacting other programs? Is that correct, Councilman Catch?
Part of it. Part of it, yes.
Madam Chair, may I be recognized? This is Stacy.
Rogers, I'm sorry.
It's no problem. Councilman Catch, just to be specific about the question you asked, that would be an enterprise-wide decision. It would not be something that would be done agency by agency. If the county executive were to consider furloughs, we'd have to do that. I have never seen in any ecosystem where that was agency by agency. That's not something that is typically done.
But in regard to the rest of, say, 5% cut or something like that, with the exception of the salaries, the director would be, with the county executive and with you, would be making these decisions department by department.
The department heads, of course, would be making their decisions. They would be giving, you set a mark or percentage, and the departments go back and look at their budgets. And then the budget team and I work together to present recommendations to the CE for his consideration.
But so the CE and you would be involved in, let's say, a particular agency, the mark is 100,000, and you decide on a 5-day furlough, and so that department will save, let's say, $20,000. The remaining 80,000 would be, how that is implemented would be the director and the administration working together.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman, are there any other members before Mr. Malinoff comes on for the auditors? Okay.
Madam Chair, first let me apologize to you and the other members for joining late. had several calls that were coming back to back. Just want to, as we review this and before Mr. Malinoff speaks, I just want to suggest that we look at the dollar amounts as one component, and then we look at the program as another component to try to define what county we want to be moving into the future. So, for example, with code enforcement, that's a serious quality of life issue. And so if we just look at the numbers related just to code enforcement, I think we're all aware of how that can negatively impact the quality of life of all of our constituents. So I would suggest that we be very strategic in our approach and be careful about broad brush cuts for core components, especially in PAI like code enforcement. Thank you.
And if you go to the appendices in the package, A and B will show you the breakdown by program of the funding and the people. So give you perspective.
Well, I just throw 2 cents in, and some people might say one agency is not more important than the other, one program is just as important as the other, and I think each agency would probably say that, just to be fair. Okay, are there any more questions or comments for the auditor before we ask Mr. Molinoff to join us? Okay then, Mr. Molinoff, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I am fully clothed from the waist down, so.
Stand up.
Behave yourself.
Is this your
Can I
first?
start?
Is this your first budget hearing?
Second.
Oh, it's your second. Okay.
Right. Well, and thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the County Council. I'm Michael Malinoff, Director of Permits, Approvals, and Inspections, the most important department.
See?
Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you regarding the FY21 budget and for the department. Thank you, and particularly to CEO Johnny Olszewski and County Administrator Stacy Rogers for their guidance in developing the FY21 budget. By the way, this is my 1-year anniversary of my tenure in.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank everyone for their support and guidance during the past year. I'd also like to thank the PAI team for their hard work and diligence, particularly during these challenging times where they've adapted on the fly in providing services to keep businesses open and the associated jobs and revenue during these very challenging times. Appearing with me off camera, 6 feet away, is Joy Schaefer, the budget analyst, who put the budget together and helped with the responses to the auditors and line items in the FY21 budget. By way of background, PAI is a department of approximately 190 hardworking and dedicated people. The department is broken down into 4 primary divisions: permitting and licensing, inspections and enforcement, real estate compliance, and development management. We're also closely associated with the Office of Administrative Hearings and the Liquor Board. As mentioned earlier, the FY21 proposed budget is $12.6 million, of which $1.7 million is Metro. The remaining $10.4 is general fund, with the $500,000 special fund for third-party reviews, for an approximate 3.9% increase, largely a reflection of salaries and necessary to continue the modest and necessary improvements started in FY20. As offered at the first budget work session 2 weeks into my tenure, I said that we would work with our agencies and the expertise and guidance of the Office of Information Technology, better integrate technology into the everyday experience of our external and internal customer, i.e. permit system, land management, and code enforcement. And by applying the strategic goals of the administration, that we would review our people, processes, and structure, and visiting our neighboring jurisdictions to better understand how we become an even stronger customer service-oriented, technologically forward-leaning, transparent, and inclusive, high-performing organization. I'm pleased to say those aspirational goals, the transition team report, industry suggestions, all spelled out last year, are becoming reality at PAI. We've suffered the small details, including fully lighting, yes, turning on the lights on our first floor and lobby where our customers come to work. Even the original mid-century sconce signage are now illuminated by LED lighting, completed in-house. We hold twice monthly leadership meetings to share information and learn from each other. For example, including a suggestion to receive up-to-date safety training for our inspectors was later provided by BCPD, thanks Chief Hyatt. And working with Deb Schindel and property management staff and designs by our staff member, Rebecca Daniels, we redesigned our lobby to better reflect the 21st century service needs of our customers. For example, there are now plugs for laptops and phones, chairs for people to sit, and a plans table for people to work. We will in the future have a central service counter, similar to what we've done during the COVID-19 crisis, all modestly, i.e. cheap, and similar to our neighboring jurisdictions. Since 2019, we posted a transparent data portal that provides monthly and comparative output measures of our prime functions. And just to note, we're kind of putting together our information for this past month, and I'm happy to say that we're processing at about the same rate as we were before. Take a look at it in about a week, but so far I've had construction drawing review, and its commercial plans review is actually 86 last month versus 49 the month before. Electrical inspections were 2,883 versus 2,787 the month before. Recorded plats were 8 versus 3 the month before, and so on. We're basically at or above our previous month's pace, and that's because we've kind of adapted and are setting up, I think, a pretty good system, all things considered, and having 50% of our people working at home. Last winter, we added 2 point-of-sale credit card machines to enable our customers to one-stop shop. And yes, they can use all cards, not just the Discover card. We implemented third-party internal landscape review and external building review. Hired a PE civil engineer, Peggy White, as our deputy to provide a vast amount of on-point professionalism and experience to improve our business processes and service delivery. I chaired, along with Councilman Patoka, the recently completed Code Enforcement Task Force. And last but certainly not least, we continue to work closely with OIT and our sister agencies in the implementation of the long overdue and much needed land management system, which was also mentioned in the cuts. In visiting neighboring jurisdictions and in my personal professional experience, we are one of the few jurisdictions without this technology, which is particularly, and I have to underscore particularly, an issue during this time of social distancing. You have no idea how many times I get the question, can I go online to process, track, and submit my permits every day? With respect to the auditor's position in seeking reductions during the pandemic, and I just received this morning, much of what PAI does is fee, fine, and revenue producing, like the tax base. So any cuts in our service will likely result in a net reduction of services and revenues. If you think we're about 80 to 90% self-funding, if you add in the fines and fees, probably more than that. And with our process improvements, probably exceeding what we cost. So I would look at that very closely. So in closing, as you can hear, PAI is working hard at becoming that best practices agency that we spoke of for FY20. Thank you for this brief introduction. We're now prepared to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malinoff. That was a great update. Who would like to be first with a question or a comment for Mr. Malinoff? Councilman Marks?
Thank you very much. Mr. Malinoff, you have been a pleasure to work with, and thank you for all your assistance. I have one question, and it relates to the auto return contract. Can you give us a status on that, and will the council be able to review that contract before it goes out to procurement?
The last time I was involved in that was a discussion earlier in the year when we were meeting with the agency. We held a hearing, annual hearing, and I thought it was with the Office of Law that they were reviewing. I haven't seen the update, Councilman Marks, so you might need to refer back to the Office of Law, and I can do so as well and get back to you.
Yeah, I mean, that's, we've been operating under the same contract, I think, for a decade, and I just think it's time that the council and the county executives branch of government put that out there, and there be a robust discussion about whether we keep auto return. So thank you very much.
Noted.
Thank you, Councilman Marks, for mentioning auto return. I just got a pretty lengthy email this morning from one of the towers. Mr. Mount, we're probably going to have another discussion that there's a real issue going on with police tows, but yet the towers are being charged their normal fee. Auto return is charging the towers $24 a tow when the police are actually ordering the tows, not auto return. So he's requesting a meeting with this. The police department said 78% of these abandoned cars are not a priority to them. So I think this is another discussion that we're going to have. Agreed, Councilman Marks?
Totally agree. Yep, 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. Next council member with a question or comment for Mr. Malinoff?
Madam Chair, I have one.
Yes, Councilman Patoka.
Thank you, Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Malinoff, for mentioning our work on the code enforcement work group. And one of the things, and this is kind of a follow-up to my earlier discussion about the nature of our cuts, dollar versus program, and I appreciate what you said, Madam Chair, that every department will want to protect what it has, certainly. But in our work, in the task force or work group, I think it was Lyle Van Domelen who said when he first came in 2006, there was, I forget if it was 16 or 19 code, I'm sorry, there was 40, somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 code enforcement officers. And today, in 2020, where the county has grown significantly since 2006, we're down to somewhere between 16 and 19. I forget the exact number of code enforcement officers. So I feel like that's a graph going in the wrong direction. And that if we're growing, the number of code enforcement officers we have should grow along in the same relationship as the growth of the county. So that's why I would suggest to my colleagues that we review this carefully, try to get the graph going in the right direction where we have enough code enforcement officers for the number of requests that come in and that are appropriate for a growing county. So thank you.
Councilman Patoka, I hear you loud and clear. Mr. Malinoff, I can tell you that in past budget meetings, we have all at some time or another asked PAI if they need additional inspectors. Because at one point back in the day when I was with another administration, they had 24 hours to get out, inspect a property, and at least say they've been there, and whether a correction notice or whatever transpired at that visit. And over the years, that has certainly decreased. I have issues that sometimes they're 2 weeks out, and I still don't know if there's been an inspector that's been to the property yet, or maybe they've been to the property and they haven't updated the software that we initially go in and look at. So my question to you, Mr. Malinoff, that software, and that was from your own inspectors, and I think even maybe at some time you may have said there was problems with that software, with updating it from the vehicle. Has that issue been resolved, or do we still have the same software and the same issue?
We have the same software. They updated it fairly recently. It's the Acela software, and I haven't heard that they've continued to have the problem with the update. That was something OIT was working on, but I can follow up and see. But I think that has been solved. I will say the staffing is continued to be an issue. We were looking at trying to do weekend and late week evening enforcement too, and that will be difficult with current staffing. I'm going to try to see if there are interested takers within the department. Sometimes people have, particularly now, parental sharing duties, and they may want to work the weekend. But with what Councilman Patoka said, I think it was 34 a couple of decades ago inspectors, and now maybe 19. So really it's dropped off.
And I can't help but think that we didn't have the rat eradication programs back then, and we do now. And that has to take more inspectors from their regular duties and regular complaints, whether it's coming from the executive office, the county council, or, a constituent calling in. So I guess, every year I say the same, I ask the same question. If you need more inspectors, please ask for them. Increase your budget, hire more inspectors. Peace out.
I'm with you.
Okay. All righty. All right. Thank you, Mr. Patoka. Any other members have a comment or a question for Mr. Malinoff?
I do, Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilman Crandall.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Malinoff. How are you?
Fine, Council. I'm trying to keep up with you. COVID hair. Mine's a little
COVID hair,
than
COVID
yours.
beard. Yeah. I'm everything COVID except for the actual positive. So thank God for that. But I want to congratulate you on your 1-year anniversary. This is also my wedding anniversary. And I think some of the members might remember that I was married the morning of May 4th, 3 years ago, and we got married, and then I left to go to budget hearings. So that's the kind of wife I had. She didn't give me any pain or grief about heading off to Towson for budget hearings. So a special day for me as well. I wanted to touch on the theme that Councilman Patoka, Councilwoman Bevins touched on, which is the amount of code enforcement officers that we have, which is probably by over half of what we had several years ago. The previous council, before Councilman Patoka joined us, unanimously passed a bill that I sponsored that would enable auxiliary police to supplement the work that code enforcement does. I think that, the bill was never intended to have auxiliary police become code enforcement officers, but it was to, for lack of a better term, deputize them to serve certain functions that could, again, supplement what code enforcement was doing and take some of the onus off of them. And the legislation still exists. The previous administration basically put a sudden halt to the whole idea, and discussions were never taken place between the police department and PAI in order to see if that bit of manpower could help out the agency in some way. And I think the council has placed a burden on PAI with our legislation that you helped work on, and I thank you for that. The legislation that we did to better regulate these clothing donation bins. So maybe that's an endeavor that auxiliary police could help us with and take some of the burden off of our code enforcement officers. So I would hope that we might entertain that conversation with Chief Hyatt in the next couple of months. The previous chief let me know that auxiliary police, they get compensation from the state depending on how many hours that they work, and it sometimes can be difficult for the department to find things for these folks to do so they can get those required amount of hours so they can get at least a little bit of compensation. So this might be an answer for the police department and an answer for PAI. So if we could hopefully get that conversation restarted, I think that might be able to benefit a couple agencies and our constituents.
Councilman, I did have a brief conversation with Chief Hyatt early on in my tenure, and she was very interested in us working together. Life has taken over a lot of our initiatives right now, but she was familiar with the interaction of police with code enforcement and how it can work to both agencies' advantage. So I look forward to it.
Okay, great, thank you. And I did see where our analysts have called out the eradication program. Haven't identified it as a cut, thankfully, but they have identified the program, and I'm thankful that the program is still moving forward. There are new methods being trialed, so to speak, and that the program is still very effective and what looks to be one of the better investments that the county has done in past years to really go to work on one of those quality of life issues that Councilman Patoka mentioned. So I just want to ask you, with regard to that program, given the constraints that we're under, so the program moves forward, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so part of that program is the second day a week trash pickup in those neighborhoods identified as part of the program. Is the plan still to offer that for those neighborhoods, the second day trash pickup?
Yes, as far as we're concerned, it is. I mean, I don't know what changes are going on with solid waste pickup overall in the county, but we haven't changed our program at all. And as Councilman Patoka mentioned, that was a major component of our discussion during the task force meetings, and the community all liked it. In fact, wanted more of it. So I don't see it changing at all. In fact, Cliff O'Connell made some suggestions, and we're trying different methods, and we anticipate a robust program going forward.
Okay, great. That's
Remember,
good to hear.
Crandall?
Yes, Mr. Rogers.
Hi, I just want to confirm that it is still reflected in DPW's budget.
Oh,
Okay, thank you for that.
Pick up.
All right, appreciate the answers. Thanks. Madam Chair, back to you.
yes, thank you, Councilman Crandall.
Madam Chair,
Yes, who is that?
that's me, Councilman Quirk.
Councilman Quirk, go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Malinoff. My question is on item 2 that was identified by the audit staff. We have this new contract, as you know, for third-party landscape architect reviews. Given this pandemic and the hit to obviously revenues, how essential is this new contract? And to me, any new contract should be very essential. So I'm curious to see how essential this one is.
Well, what we did last year was to try, and this came through, I think, suggestions from the transition team and my familiarity in other communities, was try to focus in on our log jams. And one of them was in landscape architecture. We have one person reviewing all those plans. And what we did is budgeted, I think, $25,000 in 19 for that. And we still have a little bit left. And the idea was to try to continue the program. So if anything, we could do less. But I would say it slows down the development process. And the results of that are, you get a lot of calls, I get a lot of calls, and the county probably gets less revenue. With the third-party building reviews and the special fund, that's a revolving fund. So we're collecting the revenue one for one. So the county, there is no negative impact on the county's budget. On this one, we opted for the third-party review rather than hire an employee, because in times like this, it's easier to slow down the budget on the contractor or even cut it than necessarily to lay off an employee. So the idea is, yes, there is potentially some flexibility on it, but it's actually been very successful, and we have data to show it.
Does that answer your question, Councilman Quirk?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have a comment or question?
Madam Chair, it's Wade Catch.
Councilman Catch, go ahead.
Mr. Malinoff, congratulations on your 1-year anniversary. My question.
You just can't see it.
My question is, with the code enforcement inspectors, what is the average salary? And is it considered a full-time job?
It's a full-time, oh, you mean full-time versus part-time? Most of them are full-time, and Joy's off in the distance, but I think the salary average is about 50,000. I can't hear you.
So if we were to have a 2-week furlough, that would be about a $2,000 pay cut for them.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. That
I'm
would be
just trying to
approximately, yeah.
get a perspective of, what a furlough, what effect it would have on the employees. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilman Catch. Anyone else? Well, Mr. Malinoff, I would like to say before we close that we certainly appreciate everything that you and your agency does. We know we got hardworking folks over there in PAI. I probably deal more with your agency. Well, you and Public Works are probably a toss-up. And I know you do extraordinary work, and we count on your efficiency. And I'm hoping that people are still applying for permits at this time online, and that we still have income coming into the county. But you know that these are going to be extraordinary times coming up over the next year with COVID-19, and none of us have a crystal ball and know what's going to happen. But I'm hoping to hear from every department head, whether your budget is cut or not cut by us, that you will be able to say, I'm still going to be able to run my agency and I'm going to do the best job that I can.
Yes, to that. But I do want to tell you, statistically, the permits and reviews are at or above what they were beforehand. So we're processing in business right now, and using that as a crystal ball is pretty good. And I should have all our numbers in within the week, because we do this every month. And I would invite you to take a look at it to get an idea of how things are going.
That's interesting to hear. And what type of permits are we talking for? Just putting up fences or building garages? Or are we actually talking about building homes or putting electrical in? Do you know?
Let me give you an idea. I can tell you the numbers I have so far, because we do it for the past month, and I knew April would be important because that was our full month of COVID. But for construction drawing review, minor residential was in January 10, February 8, March 13, April 10. New residential homes, January 20, February 30, March 30, and approximately the same in April. Commercial plan review, 42 in January, 29 February, 49 in March, and 86 in April. Electrical inspections have gone up from 2,700 in March to 2,800. Development plans review, new construction drawings for first review, January 7, February 1, March 10, April 6.
Wow.
And so we're not, landscape reviews that I just mentioned, 43 January, 23 February, 44 March, 52 April. So I think we've done a good job of staying open. And if you haven't, we've set up this neat kind of drop-off area. At first we had appointments, and then when we had to cut off contact, we've been dropping them off, and people have been working at home. And what's really impressive, I think, with the staff here is we're not trained public safety people, but yet they've continued to be dedicated on the front line and have continued to process what I think is really important to our economy. So the long answer is we're moving, and I think we're important to the economy, and so far so good.
Well, thank you for all you're doing, and send out an email on behalf of the county council saying keep up the good work and stay
I
safe.
will. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe this concludes today's budget hearing. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you in the next meeting.
Oh, it's still continued on, Madam Chair. We're going to keep it as one WebEx.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Hold on. Let me just get my bearings in. Thanks, Chris. Okay, everybody's here. And we are now moving on to the Department of Planning. Peter Gutwall is the director, and the Budget Office analyst is that Messina Porter? Am I pronouncing that correct? Is it Messina? Somebody said.
Yes,
Yes,
it's
Madam
Messina.
Chair,
Abby
it is
Matthews.
Messina.
I'm sorry. Oh,
Yes,
oh,
it's
okay.
Messina.
Our analyst is Messina. The
Okay.
county budget office is Messina.
Abigail, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, can we see you? There you are. Okay. Welcome. Thank you for being here today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The proposed fiscal year 2021 budget for the Department of Planning totals $3.3 million, a decrease of approximately $5.1 million, or 60.9% from the fiscal year 2020 budget. The general fund portion of the budget decreases by approximately $4.8 million, or 59.0%, primarily due to the transfer of county homeless shelter oversight and funding to the Department of Social Services. The special fund portion of the budget decreases by approximately $394,000 due to a one-time census grant received in fiscal year 2020. Certain community development special fund grant responsibilities are also shifting from the Department of Planning to the Department of Social Services for fiscal year 2021, along with the homeless shelter function. This analysis identifies 5 potential operating budget reductions ranging from $75,000 to $380,000. In your packet, you will see that each potential reduction is identified as either, quote, normal economy or, quote, pandemic economy reduction. The first normal economy reduction shown on page 5 is the type of reduction our office would be likely to identify under normal economic situations. It relates to the department's spending history. This reduction is less important to discuss now that we are in a pandemic economy. The second normal economy reduction, number 2 on page 5, may be worthy of discussion because it relates to new consulting services. The remaining reductions, beginning on page 3, relate to the new pandemic economy that we have entered. These explore how across-the-board actions might affect the Department of Planning, and the purpose of presenting them is to give the director an opportunity to discuss the operational impacts of large-scale funding changes so that the possible staffing and service level effects of lost revenues can be understood by all. Other discussion issues follow in the budget package, beginning on page 8, where we first identify the proposed budget's transfer of homeless shelter administration to the Department of Social Services. Other discussion issues include Census 2020, 2020, CZMP, the master plan, and community and business support programs, particularly related to COVID-19 response efforts. At this time, I would like to turn it over to discussion.
Thank you, Abigail. Mr. Gutwall, are you with us?
I am. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the council.
First,
I also,
I put the cart before the horse. Do any of the council members have any questions or comments for Ms. Matthew? Okay, hearing none. Okay, Mr. Gutwall, it's all yours.
thank you. Also with us this afternoon, besides Messina, I also have Connie Mahoney, who heads up a division within our neighborhood improvement, and Jeff Mayhew, who is the deputy, so he can chime in if need be. But I too would be remiss if I didn't say we are the most important department in the county. And I also, Mike and I started on the exact same day. So it was also coming up on my 1-year anniversary. And actually, it's May 6th, I think, was the very first day. And I'll never forget it because I met Stacy and Ed at 9 o'clock in the morning. They handed me my budget and said, "You got a 2 o'clock work session." So welcome to Baltimore County. But it's been a great year. We also have wonderful staff who are dedicated employees. Thank Stacy and Drew Vetter for much of their guidance and support from the county executive, as well as the council members. But over the past year, we've taken on serious, significant efforts, as you know, through the CZMP process, assisting and working with the administration on the census outreach efforts, certainly on the homelessness, as well as our voluntary compliance agreement have been huge efforts working together with across many agencies, along with Health and Human Services. But one of the biggest thing I want to highlight is our transparent process and efforts working with planning efforts, not only during all the CZMP process, working through with the council members and the communities. We also engaged in the Northwest Gateway Sustainable Communities Grants, Liberty Road action plan that we put together and submitted to the state by March 1st, even though amid the COVID issues. Pikesville Revitalization Action Plan, Reisterstown Main Street application, Towson Main Street application, and things like working with the Essex Middle River Civic Association, and also our transit oriented development application for the Middle River around Aviation Station. So those are just some of the things that we've worked on over across the year, along with the CZM process. As was addressed, we did if you recall, at this time last year, there was a lot of discussion as to why homelessness was in the Department of Planning. Realizing the easy transition over to the Department of Social Services, it was one position that shifted over, and much of the vendors' contracting money, which was about $4 million, give or take, that shifted over under that. It was an easy transition, seamless transition, because the shelter administrator was already working with the freezing weather emergencies, with the Department of Social Action Days, healthcare for the homeless, all those types of activities. They were already joined at the hip working through those types of activities and tasks associated with the homelessness shelters. As you know, we are working diligently on the census outreach. A couple of weeks ago, we came back for supplemental funds to continue that and respond to some of the COVID outreach requirements, because we had to sort of repurpose what we were doing in terms of our outreach, attending community events, meeting with community groups, those kinds of things. The one-on-ones kind of had to stop, and we shifted our gears towards the social media, email blasts, postcards, door hangings, those types of things, trying to get the word out and trying to continue that. As you know, the date for the census got shifted to October now. So we have some time and additional opportunities to try and increase our response rate to meet that goal of 90%. We still plan on meeting that 90%. And we are reaching, if you go to the census website, you'll notice that Baltimore County is exceeding what the state's exceeding in terms of response rates at this point in time. CZMP, as you know, we started off the process trying to create a more transparent process through our dashboard, through our posting up our online agency reviews, as well as an enhanced and robust staff report. All of that information we had already planned on getting out to the communities, the community engagements. Unfortunately, we got through into our work sessions with the planning board. We got through 2 of them, and we had a shift. And we went to a live stream event in which we posted, to do a summary of what has occurred in terms of receiving comments. But one of the things we did do in terms of, instead of having the hearings, we created a crowdsourcing application to receive and record comments. Not only that, do we have that people could see the different types of comments that were being developed or submitted to the department, but also we could tabulate from that, who was in favor, who was opposed, what were some of the hot topic issues, if you will, or issues that have by district. We could calculate all that information, but also the staff went through extra efforts to record every comment that we received throughout that process and posted that online as well. Then we shifted our planning work sessions through WebEx events like this. I would have to say that we're hearing a lot of good comments, although people were not exactly excited about not being able to submit comments during the process, because that was a difficult challenge. But the work sessions were probably attended, from my understanding, more so than ever before in the past, because people were able to sit in their homes and watch what was going on through the work sessions. We had somewhere between anywhere from 60, depending upon what night it was, to over 180 individuals attending those work session processes. Not only that, but if people couldn't make it that night, we now have them uploaded. Those recordings of every one of those work sessions are now on our website, so they can go back at a later time and review those recording work sessions. So we're trying to be as transparent as possible, trying to give the public opportunity to see what's being said about whatever's going on in their community as it was related to CZMP. As we look forward to the FY21 budget, obviously the master plan is on our mind. I've discussed this many times, probably sounding like a broken record of things that we need to do. And one of my jokes, and Councilman Patoka will probably appreciate this, is why we're the most important department is, as the saying goes, fail to plan and plan to fail. So, we're gearing up for that. Although the state does give us some leeway in terms of census data and the timeline associated with the requirement to update your master plan every 10 years, we do need to start in earnest in putting together our strategies, getting our community engagement outline put together, getting people involved, but also putting our data sources together. I think some of the most important information that we have to do is dealing with, all these information that we're going to need for our community facilities. There is a community facilities, there is a housing element. There are specific requirements that are identified through the county, by the state, that the county must address in their master plan. One of the things I'm going to talk about is the $50,000 for the contract services. One of the big issues, is the commercial revitalization districts. And one of the things we need to do is get some expertise in here. Certainly $50,000 is not going to pay for that whole complete study. Certainly there'll be some in-house expertise that's going to have to happen doing some of the data collection efforts. But there's an effort to understand who we are and recognizes where we want to be in those commercial revitalization districts. As you know, during the CZMP process, probably twice the applications were for commercial rezonings than there was for residential. And we're trying to address this issue of how to sustain these commercial corridors. And I think we need to get an inventory of what's out there, but also and not just inventory and what's the expendable income to support these issues, but where that money is being spent. And that's where the expertise is what I'm asking for. I mean, there's a whole host of commercial business that exists out there, but where are we deficient? Where are we, oversupplied? How there's more than we can sustain in any given area. So the idea is to bring in some experts to talk about what's going on with the retail pandemic. We were already looking at a changing world in the retail market towards the online. As I discussed with Department of Economic and Workforce Development, we talk about there's things that we're doing right now to help businesses in the pandemic, but there's also the next step of, after we come out of this pandemic, what will the retail world look like after this pandemic? And what will be the makeup and what will be sustainable? So those are some of the things that we really want to get a handle on. Certainly, we're just looking for a small amount of money to assist us. What is the future of the commercial markets in those corridors? As we move forward through COVID, there's been a lot of adjustments to it. As Mike mentioned in his presentation, through our development review process, we also adapted our process for obviously no public in our buildings, a drop-off process, a process where we download information and pan it out to the department, to the different employees who are working through that development review process. We have been working with Department of Economic and Workforce Development on assisting them in the monies that are going to be out. We will be doing intake and processing some of those applications along with them because of the onslaught that they're expecting to happen with that $10 million that will be out to assist businesses in the different areas of the county. We are also looking at our CRAG, our Commercial Revitalization Action Grants, and how we can assist since some of the events and some of the grants were dedicated to an event or a program that they no longer can do because of the COVID. We're looking at repurposing them. How can we maximize the funding between what Department of Economic and Workforce Development has with the monies that planning has? Obviously, most of ours is towards tax credits, architects on calls, and the built environment. But again, we continue to work with them and looking at the new directions of these commercial corridors. That's pretty much my presentation, and if there's any questions, I'm open to hear.
Thank you, Mr. Gutwald. Which member would like to speak first with a question or a comment? And first, I want to say happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilman Marks.
Thank you very much. I don't know what other way to raise this question, except that, some people we don't see as much as others in these forums. In 2012, the council created neighborhood commons zoning, and that was a unanimous vote by the county council. And several of us have applied this to properties in our districts over the past 8 years. The planning department did not recommend a single property in Baltimore County for neighborhood common zoning. Every single one where we recommended, you guys went against. Now, the council creates the law and the executive branch implements it. And I find it hard to believe that not one property got your endorsement for neighborhood commons. Can you comment on that?
I guess my only comment is, again, it's been a year. I'm learning. This is my first go around in Baltimore County zoning, comp zoning, and understanding the different pieces and the classifications. A lot of as we were going through them, every one of it seemed like most of those properties were either county controlled and or had covenants and restrictions that have legal mechanisms stronger than zoning classifications. So they have covenants and restrictions that are recorded in the courthouse that hold a stronger restriction of development on that property than the zoning classification would. So that was sort of the approach. And for the first time through the ZZMP process, we did a director's report. And that we sort of explained sort of our philosophies on any one of the issues. We try to take a consistent and fair approach to every one. And some of them, we got departmental agencies that were concerned about, the value of the property, particularly in recreation and parks. So those are some of the things that were weighing on our decision-making process as to why we wanted to be consistent with every approach and not try, and at least that's sort of my philosophy in approaching any type of zoning classification. Obviously, depending upon the situation in any given zoning classification, that might change, but that was sort of why we took the approach with the neighborhood commons.
Well, I understand there's properties where you have program open space money and, there's protections, but there are other properties you don't. And it takes one vote of the county council to sell off a piece of property. I just find it hard to believe that not one recommendation for neighborhood commons got your department's endorsement. And furthermore, I didn't even know what the recommendations from the planning department were going to be. No one bothered to call me on those recommendations. I'm a little ticked about this, and I just wanted to communicate that. Thank you.
I'm sure Wabatoka has plenty to say.
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. So you're right, Mr. Gutwald. I do think that planning department is, if not the most important department in county government. in many respects, I think your planning department in any jurisdiction are the unsung heroes of the jurisdiction. They make you a minor league jurisdiction or a major league jurisdiction, given the quality of the planning that goes on because of the forward thinking. Earlier, when I described that graph going in a wrong direction where we had fewer code inspectors but higher growth, that's not as forward thinking as we would like. That's not good planning. We want things that we do as a jurisdiction to accommodate the growth. And I think planning departments help dictate that. I think, let me just say, I think you have outstanding talent in your department. And I think very highly of you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me a chance to speak on this. One thing I will ask about this $50,000 for commercial revitalization, I'm not sure exactly how it's the $50,000 you talked about to look at commercial areas. So we're almost through the CZMP. And so we won't be doing that again for 4 years. Is it possible to defer that until 2022? Since we know that it's a small piece, but it seems like a piece that will do the least amount of pain moving into 2021. Obviously is going to be a very difficult year for us. How much harm does that do the department or the objectives you have as a new director for a planning department?
Well, so I believe that part of that data will help us be able to answer some of the anecdotal pieces of information that communities and businesses and everybody and property owners have been discussing since I've been here. So we've talked about this even prior to the master plan or prior to any of this pandemic about trying to get a handle on the information so we can set out a decent strategy. And this is, I mean, certainly anything can be delayed. We've talked about the census data getting delayed, but I think this is something right out of the chute that needs to get done in order for us to start establishing information and a basis of knowledge for not just us, but at the community as large.
And I guess the follow-up question is, how will all of this impact the master plan once we get the census data in? When does your master planning start for master plan 2030?
Yeah, we want to start at at the end of the CZMP process. So hopefully the beginning of this calendar year, we'll start some of the efforts, putting together the strategies, putting together the steps in the process, and started getting some of the communities engaged. Because I think even, it's going to take a long process. So even as we start developing all those types of things, then as the data comes in, we'll be able to answer some of the questions and some of the themes that are coming out through the communities. One of the other things I forgot to mention as part of our master planning effort, as you know, a lot of these community plans, there's 50 of them in the county, and some of them are up to 20 to 25 years old. And one of my ideas is to a lot of that information, have the planners develop what's relevant or what's valid anymore, and roll that up into these are the strategies. Are these strategies with the communities still valid, or do some of these go away and we institute new ones? So we need to bring all of those. My idea is to bring those community plans up to speed with this update of the master plan, so that if we have to do a deeper dive in one community or the other because we don't have enough information, we can at a later date. But there's so many different varying levels of those community plans and how old they are that I'm not sure everything's relevant.
Thank you, Pete, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Councilman.
Catch, yes. Mr. Gutwald, congratulations on your 1-year anniversary. Time does fly, doesn't it?
Yes.
When Baltimore County began to gain population in the 50s, 60s, 70s, there really was no requirement that communities have open space, especially the communities that are within the Beltway, many of them have no open space at all. And the purpose of the neighborhood commons was to, whatever open space is there, to protect it. And so I was concerned to hear that all of the proposals for NC were rejected. One thing that you said that did concern me, you said something about that it would diminish the value of the property. Well, let me just say that if it's county-owned property and it's open space in a community, we don't want to sell it. So I don't know what the advantage would be to have the value of that property high. So I'm concerned about that. The Department of Planning does understand how important open space is, how important it is to people's health, etc. And if you could just talk about the department's position on open space in older communities, and because we know that there's requirements in the newer ones. I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Totally agree. I think the department's position, totally supports open space. And I would say through the development review process, we angle for more open space, even beyond what's required. I have historically done that through my career, trying to, get more open space, even if they're meeting the requirements of the law. I value it completely. In terms of the NC, I would say lessons learned to both you and Councilman Marks. It obviously adds. I'm not disagreeing that it adds a added protection to those areas. Not understanding the zoning classification as we get through our processes. I always remind people it's kind of interesting. We have to do our process sort of from a clinical standpoint. We have the communities out there trying to do as much intel as they can with the different community groups, but we don't have the luxury of public hearings. We make our recommendations, then it goes to the planning board. Something needs to be changed as part of the process. So love to hear more from the communities themselves than the information we got. So, I would say, it's a lessons learned with the NC Commons from my perspective, and would offer that, to you guys as understanding where you're coming from in protecting open space and the need for more open space in the county.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Any other council members have a comment or a question for Mr. Gutwald?
Just, Ms. Kathy,
Yes, Councilman Mark.
Mr. Godwald, thank you for that statement. That's all.
Sure. And I apologize if we didn't reach out to you during the process. I thought staff was attempting to do that with every council person. So, lesson learned, like I said.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilman.
one comment. Pete, you had mentioned that the planners don't have the benefit of community input when they're making their recommendation. I kind of like that aspect of it. I mean, they certainly have their intelligence from their field work. So, for example, Bill Skabensky's out in the field in the 2nd District. But I like the idea of having the first designation be from what the planning department believes are pure land use principles and good land use principles. And then it gets tweaked from there through the public hearing of the planning board, and then certainly through the council proceedings, we'll tweak it as well. But I kind of like the idea of us working with a baseline of strong land use principles coming out of the planning department, absent of kind of all the other noise that, not noise, but other factors, they may not be related to land use.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Can I jump in here? I would agree with you, Izzy. My only point is that I would have liked to known the rationale behind that recommendation once it went to the planning board. That's it. I mean, I have a very good planner in my district. I just didn't know what the rationale was.
I
So
felt,
I'll just add real quick. We tried to do that through our, and that's why I talked about the enhanced staff reports. We attempted to do that, and Councilman Patoka, that there is your planner expertise evaluation. And if you look at those staff reports for each and every one of the issues, it goes through several pieces, of information regarding the land use, the planning, the community plans, all that kind of stuff, and sort of develops sort of the final recommendation and what that rationale was. I always, one thing you miss is in terms of the community or the public engagement is things that you don't know, things that are not tangible, things that you can't pick up a piece of paper and read. It's what that community witnesses in their communities. And I always talk about that a lot of times through development plans, because, take a traffic study, for instance. We can look at those numbers and we can see the level of service and we can do an assessment of what's going on at that intersection, but the community knows how the behaviors of what people are doing in terms of that community. And I always give the example of, we were calculating that this intersection was working at an acceptable level of service because we were counting the number of cars going through. The reality is the people were going through and then cutting through a parking lot and making a left-hand turn. They weren't using the left-hand turn signal. And that is always my story of why it's important to have community input. Because we didn't realize that till we went out and witnessed it ourselves and saw what was going on by the community engagement. So
There's one theory of planning, Pete, where if you build a campus, for example, don't build any sidewalks. Let the students and teachers create the sidewalks through whatever paths they use, and then pave those areas.
Right. Good point.
Councilman Marks, I tend to agree with you on some of the neighborhood commons issue. I had quite a few that were recommended by the Towson Alliance in some of my very dense Parkville neighborhoods, which back into the Herring Run. And it's all about protecting that stream. And we all know the city flows down the Herring Run into Back River, and a lot of trash and debris and erosion happening with that stream. So I guess the good thing is planning can make their recommendations, and that's what they are, recommendations. And at the end of the day, we get to make the decision with knowing what those recommendations are, whether we want to put the NC on or not, even after the recommendations. So that's the beauty of the process.
Madam Chair, if I could, then I will promise I will stop.
Okay.
I view it this way. It's as if a musical artist were in the studio and they do their raw recording, and that's kind of the first set of recommendations. And then as we put it to vinyl or CD or to MP3, we're adding a little bass and adding and taking up the vocals, and we're manipulating it until it's beautiful. And that's what will happen when we make our recommendations, Madam Chair.
That's a great analogy.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilman Jones.
I'm just curious, is this a credited course or non-credit course? I'm just trying to decide whether I should stay around.
I don't even have an instrument. Are there any?
Definitely credited.
Are there any members with any other questions or comments for Mr. Gutwald? Well, thank you, Pete, for your second successful budget hearing. And I know I just said this with PAI, who came before you. This is going to be a very tough year for us, and having to make some cuts, I'm assuming, because of COVID-19. It will be unlike anything I think that we've ever had to deal with before. And I know whether you get the cuts, get some of the cuts, or get all the cuts, you will figure out how to continue operating the Department on Planning and show us great leadership. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, this is over, and we're done, right? We are done for today. See you guys next time.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
6 o'clock.
Thank you.
Right.